He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered.
One and the first will be our call on President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana, supported by his Minister for Health and Minister for Interior, to take urgent practical steps for the reopening of Ghana's land borders to allow for free flow of persons and goods across ECOWAS and the rest of the world. Post-COVID, we are not out of the woods yet, but we want to see a return to normalcy with the movement of goods and services through our borders. And therefore, whatever proactive measures government needs to take, there can be no justification for the continuous closure of Ghana's land borders. Therefore, as a minority, our primary concern this afternoon is to call on the President, as chair of ECOWAS, to do that which is needful to give meaning to the resolutions he so chaired for ECOWAS to pass, to allow and facilitate the free movement of goods and services between us, our neighbors, and the rest of the world. Another diplomatic blunder. President Akufo-Addo is our key diplomat, and he has a duty to keep our relationship with our foreign friends and neighbors well. My understanding is they have gone to demolish the Bulgaria embassy in Ghana. This is unacceptable, and this can sever ties between Ghana and Bulgaria and its other foreign allies. We just don't want to believe that all this is happening under the watch of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Former foreign minister, former attorney general, he can't respect the Vienna Convention on diplomacy.
The government has lost policy direction in how to manage the economy. We know that in economic policy, you take all sides of it and then go around it and do a policy that will benefit the people, enable them to function well, so you can give them, you can tax them. If the people are unable to function properly, then they are unable to consume, they are unable to make money, they are unable, first of all, to make money, they are unable to consume, and government taxes are low. So it's important for government to do everything for the people to earn money. Where the people spend more than they receive, your taxes will not make any meaning. So it's important for government to now take the present situation, design it in such a way that the people pay less for fuel, even though there's increasing demand on the increase of fuel, so that you will gain it back by the taxes you will take from them. So there are three things that are responsible for increases in fuel prices. And the first one is the price of fuel worldwide. Where there is an increase in fuel cost outside the country, there is a compulsion for a rise of fuel where you live. Now, the other issue is about the taxes we impose on fuel. We have imposed more than 13 or so kind of taxes on our fuel. It's so much. So if you are able to, that one is a local, domestic, factor. The other factor is when the cedi depreciates. If you can control the depreciation of the cedi, you can control the taxes you have imposed yourself to reduce the fuel prices. If you can control the external price, you can control the taxes you impose on them. The other issue is also because it is possible for you to engineer the rise of the cedi beyond the present levels, by facilitating more export, so that people can export more, earn more in local in the dollar terms, and then relieve the Bank of Ghana from too much pressure, and eventually create value for the Ghanaian cedi.
You and I are witnesses to the hikes in petroleum prices. Indeed, in less than 3 months, petroleum prices have increased by almost 70% at the pumps. If you take 33 African countries, Ghana has the highest price when it comes to petroleum products at the pumps. I'm not talking about the United States, I'm not talking about Europe, I'm not talking of developing countries. I'm talking of our peers, including countries that are not oil-producing countries. Ghana's petroleum pricing today is the worst amongst 33 African countries. Indeed, transport prices have increased by 15%. Inflation today is at a rate of 15%. In the Greater Accra, it's about 19%. This morning, the exchange rate, the dollar to cedi, is trading at 8.5 Ghana cedi. The Ghanaian cedi today is the worst in Africa in terms of performance with other major currencies. The price of diesel at the pump is over 40 cedis per gallon. That is the true state of the Ghanaian economy today. Workers are suffering, teachers are suffering, drivers are suffering, members of parliament are suffering, market women are really suffering. Indeed, you wake up today and you don't even know how you are going to make ends meet. And instead of this government sitting up and thinking out of the box, all what we hear is that they do not control well market pricing. The petrol we buy today is largely on account of the depreciation of the cedi. We control the cedi here. The economic management team under Dr. Baumia has failed woefully. Indeed, they have run out of ideas. The vice president has gone into comatose. He is nowhere to be found. This is the time he has to demonstrate leadership. This is the time government must show that it cares for the people. It is not for nothing that we instituted the Energy Sector Levies Act. Our checks indicate that the Energy Sector Levies Act has and yet the balance of 3 billion cannot be accounted for. Worst of them is the Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy. It is supposed to cushion Ghanaians and petroleum consumers in difficult moments like this. The Price Stabilization Levy was supposed to accrue over 2 billion. Only 1 billion has been spent. Where is the remainder of the Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy? This government has been a monumental failure. We call on President Akufo-Addo to dissolve the economic management team because they have not lived up to expectation. Indeed, if I were the vice president, what I would be doing is to tender in my resignation as head of the economic management team. Yes. This performance has been abysmal. Indeed, the failure of this government is legendary. The failure of this government is unprecedented. We have had so much money accruing from our petroleum exports. The benchmark value that we put per barrel was $61 per barrel. Today, Ghana is selling its crude at a price of over $100. So what are we doing with the windfall in terms of the revenues that is accruing? At least we will be charitable. We will not just criticize. We are calling on government to use part of that money to cushion the ordinary Ghanaian. We are calling on government to use part of the reserves from the energy sector levies, especially the price stabilization levy, to cushion Ghanaians. We are also calling on government to desist from profligate and ostentatious expenditure, some of which are needless, so that we can make savings to cushion the ordinary Ghanaian. You and I are witnesses to the hikes in petroleum prices. Indeed, in less than 3 months, petroleum prices have increased by almost 70% at the pumps. If you take 33 African countries, Ghana has the highest price when it comes to petroleum products at the pumps. I'm not talking about the United States, I'm not talking about Europe, I'm not talking of developing countries. I'm talking of our peers, including
To lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and
African televisions, the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. It's a Saturday morning. My name is Senna Nombo. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's edition of the show. And today we'll be discussing, of course, the biggest issue now is the issue of fuel prices. If you go around the various filling stations, you see the prices themselves, and you'll be a little stunned. But it's not a phenomenon that is only peculiar to Ghana. There are situations where somebody, the fact that our currency is not doing so well. But if you go around globally, you see other countries struggling to keep up with the increasing prices of the commodity on the international market because of the fight in Ukraine. Question is, what can we do to address this issue immediately? There have been several proposals on the table. Would government take any? We'll be discussing that in our very first topic for discussion because of the hardship, of course, that an increase in fuel price will impose immediately. It is direct and it's straightforward. Immediately, fuel prices go up. You see some commodities go up immediately. The price of some commodities go up immediately because of the cost of transporting them. So we'll be discussing that in our very first discussion. And then we'll spend some time talking about the issue of the demolition of the Bulgarian embassy. The story, because government has taken some step on this issue, and I wanted to read to you what has been decided and the move that has been taken, because a special inquisitor has been appointed to the Ministry for Lands and Natural Resources to look into the matter, how an embassy sited in Ghana that's supposed to have the protection of the Ghanaian government had its edifice pulled down, and up till now the people who did that are still continuing to do whatever they want on that piece of land. We'll be discussing that as a second issue, and then the third issue will be it's not the first time. Actually, there were demonstrations at the various land borders, especially at Plawe and Lobo. Those two places, there were demonstrations for the opening of those borders. Up till now, it has not been opened. The information minister says, well, soon it will happen. This is after the minority started a renewed pressure to get the borders open. Those are the issues we'll be discussing on Alhaji and Alhaji this morning. Once again, welcome. And if you're watching us, please share your thoughts and your views with us on what you think about the issues we'll be discussing. We are live on Pan-African Television. We're also live on Ahunto 92.3 FM. We are live on several other affiliate stations across the country. We are live on Volta One TV, which is the other television channel we are live on. If you're joining us by social media, use the comment section, share your thoughts with us, and I'll read it as we go along in the show. Once again, welcome. Well, those of you who have seen the flyer for this show will know that we're supposed to have Haja join us for the second time. We are having for the first time, my producer gets Eric Amwakuchum, who is a government spokesperson on the show. So I have Haji Azuera Mohammed Ibrahim joining us, who is Member of Parliament for Salaga South. I have her. I also have Eric, but I do not have Phyllis Kwachofosu and Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. Because they are unable to join us today. In their place, we'll have a financial analyst, Nia Boyanan, join us. And then we'll also have Dr. David Percy, who is a student of history and politics, join us later on in the show. So that's the slight change in the panel that you see this morning. We'll start the discussion with the issue of fuel prices. I realized that when I was coming, Shell actually hadn't crossed 10 yet. They were doing 9.99 and 9.7. Total interestingly, we're doing 10.08 for one, and was doing 9.7, same 9.7 that they are doing. There are those who project that it will get worse. And let me read a story from Ghana Web. One of the story that's making the rounds there is that the concern, it was published on Wednesday, that the Concerned Drivers Association of Ghana has given the government a one-week ultimatum to reduce fuel prices or be forced to take drastic actions. According to the drivers, the 8.44 cedis mark per litre of petrol is highly abnormal and causing unbearable hardship on them. That is when it was at 8.44. So now we are doing 9.99 in some circumstances, but it depends on where you are buying from. But a lot of them have crossed the 9 cedi mark. And so this morning we are discussing that issue. Since I usually don't do baptism of fire, so I will start with Hajia to my immediate left on this issue, and then we'll move across on these discussions. They can stay with us and continue to share your views with us. Hajia, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Senna. Good morning, Eric. Yeah, good to meet you for the first time. Yeah, let me say good morning to the people of this country. Let me say good morning to President Akufo-Addo for finally coming to the grand realization that there are critical issues in this country, and I get a sense that him and his cabinet are beginning to be forthright with the people of Ghana. I want to also use this opportunity to greet the people of Salaga South, the Pembura, his sub-chiefs, and all our queen mothers. I say Ansan Kushum, Anshuma. Senna, the issue of fuel prices and its attendant difficulties to the ordinary people of Ghana has been spoken about severally. I think sometime 2 weeks ago, there was actually a meeting of the Ghana Private Road Transport Association to persuade government to look at the issue in order to make their businesses better and in the long run offer relief to the people of Ghana. I recall that before they went into that meeting, they had the position of having no option than to increase transport fares by 30% if the current situation persisted. They went into the meeting and those increases came to 4%, and this is just 3 weeks ago. Now, I heard in your intro saying that the issue of fuel prices have become topical due to the Russian and Ukrainian difficulties that we are facing. But Senna, when did the Russian invasion of Ukraine start? I'm sure someone can help me with when we had this. I mean, Putin being putting the world on edge on our hands. But before that, we had witnessed consistent increases in fuel prices. So for us to be seeking to hide behind the current situation in Ukraine as a justification for the increases that we are witnessing, I think does not answer the question. No doubt, conflict anywhere in the world, especially when it is in areas that are at the forefront of world supplies in petroleum and other, it becomes problematic for every economy in the world. But before that, before this war, we had seen almost a monthly increase in fuel prices locally. So I think we can separate the discussion, talk about what are the issues that led to those increments before the issue of Ukraine, and the impact of the Ukrainian situation has to be properly dilated. So we saw a country where we woke up every morning and the prices of fuel and petroleum products has gone up. The Minister of Finance is on record to have said that failure to pass the electronic levy would mean that they have no option but to increase fuel prices because everybody buys fuel. Is that what we are witnessing? Is that the case, that ordinary Ghanaians have to suffer because a certain law cannot be passed? What is the explanation for the earlier increases that we experienced? In 1 month, petrol prices will increase 3 times without prior notification to anybody. Its concomitant, repercussions is that goods, the movement of goods and services, the movement of human beings suffers. Before the last increase, it cost 95 cedis for any of my constituents who came to Accra to travel back to Salaga. They bought a ticket on VVIP for 95 cedis. Immediately after the increase, it's gone to 125 cedis. Now, what is the reality? The reality is that these same people haven't seen any increase in their incomes. So where are they making up the extra money to be able to pay so that they can travel from Accra to Salaga? Those questions have to be answered. Most of the people out there are peasant farmers. They will farm, they carry their yam to Accra to sell, make something small, buy either a bicycle for the family or a motorbike, or go to pay their children's school fees. They have to now pay extra for transport, taking away from the available cash for the family. Government needs to begin to look at what measures government can put in place in order that the citizens' lives can be a little bit comfortable. It is not enough to say that we have a difficulty in Ukraine and so prices are skyrocketing and that's it. We sit down and watch. The ordinary citizen, that's why we have a government. Part of government's duty is to see to the welfare of the people of this country. So far, government hasn't told us what plan they have in order to ameliorate this difficulty that is coming to Ghanaians. We've seen up to 9 cedis, as you said. We've seen the dollar at 1 to 8. We don't know what's happening Monday morning. By Monday morning, we don't know what's going to happen in this country. All of us, our salaries, our remunerations have been stagnant. No one has seen any increase in salary. And yet we are asked to bear this additional cost because government holds its hands at the back and says it is helpless. It has no solution. It cannot do anything about the Ukrainian situation. And for that matter, you and I have to find a way to exist in this country. That's not how governments behave. Governments everywhere in the world, when situations become this critical, we are virtually like in a pandemic, probably worse than COVID. What is government's plan? What can government do? What do you have to do so that the people of Mamprusi, the people of Aveime, the people of can also feel a little bit comfortable? These are the questions that government has to answer. And I'm hoping, we don't know whether they have ended the cabinet meeting that was convened or the going through it over the weekend. But we are hopeful that maybe next week sometime, we'll hear something more palatable from government. And we need to do that. We don't have to go into the debate over what fuel prices mean for the ordinary Ghanaian. We know that already. We know that as soon as that happens, the pawpaw that you bought for 2 cedis yesterday becomes 2 cedis 50 pesos. Because the pawpaw seller has to take trotro to Agbogboshi to buy the pawpaw, take trotro back to wherever she says to sell it, and so she'll pass on the additional cost to the final consumer. That we know. So going into that will not help anybody. It is a reality. We are going to have to deal with it. The only group of people with a mandate to deal with it is government and its cabinet. So we are looking to see, I suspect, and I think that we might be able to do more justice to this subject matter next week, after we hear what comes out of the cabinet meeting. We know they are talking about a lot of things, but we also need to know what plan government has to sort of provide some cushion for Ghanaians. We've heard snippets of some people within the ruling party suggesting that with the hardships that we are going through, government should suspend some social intervention programs that they named flagship programs, free SHS, NAPCO, and all of those things. We've heard that from individuals. We don't know whether it's going to be government policy. And I believe all of these thoughts and sentiments are coming up because of the current economic situation. We will need a full basket of everything in one basket. Tell us, government, what do we have? What can you do? So we can prepare ourselves to maybe meet government halfway. Senna, you will recall the Professor Kwesi lecture on the economy. And he said something that I don't know if I was the only one who heard. But Professor Kwesi said that when Ghana had difficulties in the early 80s, when he was finance minister, those days they were not finance ministers, he was PNDC secretary in charge of finance. What they did, that before going to the IMF, before going on the structural adjustment programs, they spoke to Ghanaians. They cultivated, they carried Ghanaians along, so that at the end of the day, every Ghanaian knew what the situation of the country was and what government was proposing to do. Before they went to IMF and came on with the structural adjustment programs. When that happened, and still the situation was a little bit difficult for everybody, they sought other interventions. And that's where we had the PAMS card, the Program of Action to Mitigate the Social Cost of Adjustment. That came into force in order to make things easy for Ghanaians. We are not seeing this government talking to Ghanaians. This government is a government that Ghanaians put together. All of us lined up at the ballot and voted for this government. So if in the course of governance you run into difficulty, even when there's good news, you owe it to share with Ghanaians. Not to talk about when there are difficulties. You have to communicate to us. You have to tell us the government is not engaging Ghanaians. When the e-levy hit a stumbling block in Parliament, we saw the finance minister and a team going around doing so-called People's Assembly. I don't know how many centers they visited, but clearly they didn't go to all the 16 regional capitals. Not to talk about the municipal and district assembly centers. To how far did they travel with that engagement? We Ghanaians need to understand the government owes Ghanaians an explanation of how we got to where we are and what government intends to do after, taking into account the current situation. I think that is what I can say for now about the issue of the fuel increases. It is there, it is a reality, and Ghanaians are suffering. The suffering of Ghanaians is what government has a responsibility to look at. And we are hoping that government will come out with a policy or some program to cushion Ghanaians in this period of hardship. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hajia. A big thank you. And I saw when Hajia was referring to what the meeting that was held, I saw a story from the IEA who are also saying they have a few proposals that they believe government should take into consideration before jumping to the IMF. That there are some policy proposals that they think government can consider. And that's the position that has also been taken by, I think, Professor Ransford Japo, who has also been speaking on this matter. And this is I'm reading from Nigerian Online. It says, in a statement issued on Friday, the institute said, I suggest below measures that I believe government and the Bank of Ghana can take to help build the needed policy credibility, restore the economy to some level of sanity, and may go into the IMF are necessary. And they have been making some proposals. One, work to resolve the current stalemate in Parliament over the e-levy as a matter of urgency. To that end, we suggest splitting the proposed rate of 1.75% between telcos, 1.0%, and consumers, 0.75%. We believe this is a compromise that both the majority and minority can accept. Two, take additional measures to scale up revenue, which is below par. This should include the following. One, pass the tax exemption bill to reduce the scope and scale of exemptions. Two, enforce tax compliance, especially by professionals. Introduce segregated corporate tax ranging from the current level of 25% for indigenous companies to 35% for foreign companies. And then they continue. The third one is take urgent measures to reduce expenditure whose level and composition remain problematic. The measures should include, and then they list it. And then the fourth proposal is to reduce the 2022 fiscal deficit from 7.5% to 6.0% to boost credibility of the budget and reduce concerns regarding both fiscal and debt sustainability. I go to Eric next. Eric, good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to see you.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to get an opportunity to, of course, speak to Ghanaians. And thanks for inviting me. Good morning, Nadia. Well, I mean, I feel that on the issue of fuel prices, even in most cases, I would not even delve into the whole fuel politics. I mean, take into account experiences from the past. I mean, if I would want to bore you with a certain historical analysis of the issues, you realize that we've come full circle. I mean, I've heard people aspiring to run for office saying that they will reduce fuel prices drastically and all of those things. When, as a country, we've all agreed that the only way to go was to ensure that there was a certain liberalization of the whole sector. I mean, she mentioned Professor Kwesi Botry. I remember as a kid in times past where you have challenges going to the pump to even have access to fuel, just because we had a certain pricing regime in place. And we've come a long way. I don't think that the merits of having a certain liberalized pricing regime as to what pertained before is up for debate, right? So we've had a certain system over a period which seems to be working. I mean, reading from different parts of the world in terms of what's happening within the fuel crisis, you realize that in some parts of the world, they don't even have the fuel to start with. And there are people fighting, even in the sub-region, there are people actually fighting at the pumps to be able to get access to fuel. You know, so sometimes when we have issues as a country, I look at it from two perspectives. You can look at it from a very, what you call a half-full perspective or a half-empty perspective, that we have a system in place that actually ensures that regardless of how difficult it is, Ghanaians would be able to have access to fuel when they need it. And for me, that is very important because, I mean, which one would you rather have? Some higher prices or having not having fuel at all? I mean, it's a debate that we can have. The reality on the ground is that, as we speak, the exigencies on the global market is what's actually affecting the prices. You know, a lot of people try to say that, oh yeah, because of what's going on with the Russia and Ukraine crisis, the price of fuel has gone up and all of those things. But it's government's responsibility to manage the cedi, and if there's a certain depreciation, then it means that that is probably the main reason. But the truth of the matter is that the moment you start buying fuel or crude, you're supposed to pay 100 times more, or I mean 100% more than you were paying, let's say, 2 months ago, when the price of crude was hovering around $60 and $65 per barrel. And all of a sudden, you're hovering around 111, 120, 115. The reality is that now you need more cities to purchase the same quantity of barrels, right? And that would put pressure on your city anyway, regardless. So regardless of all the issues in terms of the economics of it and why we are facing the challenges we are facing, we just have to come to a realization that some of the issues are so, extreme that we do not have control over these things, especially those things that are happening on a global scale. But what we can do is to have, I'm happy that she was saying that what can we do immediately, what are the medium-term things that we can put in place, and what are the strategic long-term things that we can put in place. The reality is that as we speak, the various things that are within the remit or control of government is really the taxes on it, right? But when you find a situation where it's so fluid, where last night it was 104, you wake up it's 111 and all of those things, even the actions that you put in place might not be sustainable going forward. You understand? So the reality is that we need to find ways of, one, having the system that as we go along would be able to deal with the shocks, right? So what do we do? Let's think strategically. As we speak, we have BOST, which is set up essentially to be the agency that would hold strategic reserves for us, right? We have TOR. God has been kind to us as a country that we can have some kind of crude. So you start thinking about how do we put a system in place to ensure that you increase the capacity of BOST. You realign TOR to be able to get to the point where we can actually refine some of the crude that we have, right? And hold some strategic reserves over a period so that when an issue like the Russian and Ukraine issue happens, at least you have some 4, 5, 6 months of strategic stocks to be able to, cushion the process. And so, yes, I'm not one of those people who would disagree with any Ghanaian that says that the fact that the fuel prices have gone up would necessarily affect everybody or has some repercussions when it comes to hardships. I would not sit here and dispute that. But the reality is that we are not an island as a country. So we are playing in a global landscape. I've seen videos, countries that are supposed to have, huge economies. Some of the top economies in the world in terms of struggling to deal with this same issue, right? So let's find pragmatic ways of dealing with it. Apart from the conversation around even the fuel, everybody seems to think that the global impact of COVID, for example, is gone. But in reality, when you're looking at a whole global recession or a slowing down of growth as a result of COVID, it has a ripple effect on every country. So again, you're moving from just the rhetorics and the politics as usual to say that how do we ensure that as we go along, if there's some kind of pandemic going, as we go along, we are able to have systems in place to, again, minimize the shocks that we have as a country. So you're looking at inwardly to manufacture things that we have a certain capacity to do so, to support your local industry, to eschew a certain appetite for the importation of things that we have a certain, if you like, competitive and comparative advantage to produce locally and all that. Because I think that the Ghanaian people are becoming a bit impatient with the political class, the likes of us. Because if you want to go back 20, 30, 40 years and we're looking at retro, you can read all these newspapers and take the same newspaper that was maybe published in 2005 or 1994 or 1992. It's the same issues that's been recycled over and over again. We've gotten to a point where we have to start actually making certain pragmatic decisions. Some of the decisions that we have to take. You see, all these people who are calling for, government has to do something about it, government has to do this, and we have to do this, are the same people who will sit on the fence when certain very difficult decisions have to be made. You understand? For example, I will not agree, and I don't think that is even being considered by governments to suspend any social intervention or put truncate any of the flagship government policies that we are doing. Because you see, if you're being very honest with yourself, in a situation where we are having these challenges with fuel and all that, and you have to, at the beginning of a term, also go and find money to pay school fees, right? Or you're a farmer, you're not getting the support that the planting and food for jobs gives you, right? Or you are a rural folk somewhere and you're not able to get the small stipends that come from LEAP. Or your child is in school and they are not getting the support that they would get when they go to school when it comes to the school feeding program. Just picture, right? Just picture a Ghana without all of these social interventions in a current situation. So I don't think the government would even consider, truncating any of these policies, right? And so if we want to have a proper conversation around what we can do, it will require, again, a certain collaborative effort from all sides. Now, one breath, the opposition say, oh, we are nationalistic, we're thinking about the country and everything. Yet, anytime there's any policy that would actually inure to the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian, they'll kick against it. And you know why? For political expediency. Right? And so in all of these conversations, even saying that, oh, these are the things that needs to be done. I've read the commentary that's coming from the IEA. Certain individuals, I had snippets of the Professor Botre's lecture that he did and everything. I've not seen any official commentary coming from the NDC, for example, and say, okay, if we were in government today, these are the things that we'll put in place to actually mitigate some of the challenges that we are facing. I haven't heard it. Right? And the only thing that they will say is that, oh, when you're campaigning, you said X, Y, Z. But you see, if you're going to talk about footage of videos and things that people have said, remember somewhere in 2014, 2015, we had similar issues with the global oil issues. When the president at the time, President Mahama at the time, was asked to use the ESLA, or the Stabilization Fund, to mitigate the challenges that we are facing. Do you know what he said? Do you remember what he said? Right? And so we can go back and quote each other and say things and try to score political points. And I'm saying that the Ghanaian people are becoming a bit impatient with the political class. And I'll be very honest with you. But at least we are putting things in place. We are trying to make sure that we would have that conversation. As we speak, that retreat is happening. Definitely government will have to come out with some pragmatic solutions to do these things. In the immediate term, medium term, long term, so that even when it does happen, the effect, its negative impact on the Ghanaian people will be minimized. But as for the fuel politics, we can do it, we can say all the things that we like and all that. But the reality on the ground is that we are exposed to the exigencies. We are exposed to the exigencies, right? I've heard people make some suggestions that maybe there's a time that the BOG comes in and the policy rate should be reviewed and interest rate should probably be reduced so that it gives some room for the private sector to invest in the economy in certain key areas, so that it actually, again, the whole idea of import substitution, where we are importing things that we have a certain capacity to produce locally, there'll be a certain motivation on the part of the private sector to go into that space. Then you ask me, what have government done? Listen, you know the sort of impact that we've done when it comes to the issues to do with rice. In the last 2 or 3 months, there are a couple of tomato processing factories that have been set up in this country. The Ministry of Agri, through their Planting for Food and Jobs, gave improved varieties of tomatoes to farmers. And as we speak, they will tell you that even the yields that they got are exponential. These are things that are practical things that have been done by government. But if anybody says that maybe it's not far-reaching enough, or we need to increase the ante, as the British will say, I won't have a problem with that. But these are some of the things that are being put in place. As we speak, even the issues today, the vaccines. There's a collaboration to actually produce our own vaccines locally, as a collaboration with some African countries within the sub-region, right? Our collaboration and partnership with Côte d'Ivoire when it comes to issues to do with cocoa. So in terms of the big ticket flagship things, I think that we understand and appreciate what needs to be done. If people say that yet still, because of all these challenges, they're still having difficulties, I won't have a problem with that, right? But you can trust that government is working to put these things into order.
Thank you. I was hoping we were going to get us some scoop from the ongoing meeting, but thank you.
That was not part of my remit.
I think we'd have to go and come back to it. So please bear with us. Bear with us. I'll go to Dr. Percy shortly. We're discussing the issue of fuel price increments and their resultant hardships. But let me do a few of the messages you're sending to us. EU Farouk in Tamale North says a good morning. Seriously, the government economic management team is needless and waste of our resources. What new have the team brought to the growth of the collapsing economy? Otumfuo, convener of Crossfire Ghana, says, are we not producing oil? Stop talking about Ukraine. Well, we should remove taxes on petroleum products. Even Ukraine have not increased their oil prices. Ankama Jaba says, any political party that does not respect the legacy of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah will go down forever. This is the reason why MPP government is suffering. When you lie to power, the same lies will expose your economy and disgrace you. Dennis Yakwiti says, I just hope that the galloping increase in the fuel prices will teach our politicians this time around some lessons across the political divide and bring to an end the needless opportunistic petrol politics during political campaign. As long as we continue to depend heavily on importation, which of course is driven largely by the very politicians tasked to manage our economy positively, which ends up putting pressure on the cedi, a little political economic shake on the global terrain would continue to expose the weak fundamentals of our economy. On the continuous closure of the land borders, those of us hailing from Volta region along the borders have no doubt in our minds that it was to show us where power lies. But it is just a matter of time and nature will rise to our defense. Dennis Akwete sent that one. Real Ghana says consistently, Nanadri and Dr. Baumia have always had lectures on the state of the nation of Ghana in opposition between 2012 and 2016. Today in 2022, the same people have decided to run away from their mandatory role of giving the State of the Nation's address to Ghana as rulers. So what's changed now? What are they hiding to this effect? He continues to say that going to the IMF is not a real headache. After all, IMF is not an abattoir. The issue is how the world is going to uncover their cooked figures in our books. The stringent measures to curtail their opulence and the lack of self-dependence to still the little left. Arnold Black Coffee. Sesana, okay, thank you, Arnold. This is Suleiman Abdul Rahim who says, our lawlessness is now becoming unbecoming and we should not internationalize it. Else we will be facing unintended consequences. The demolition of the Bulgarian embassy is unthinkable. Prosper Kweu, Sesana, kudos to the Honorable MP. She has no size at all. Fuel prices had started rising long before stubborn Putin invaded Ukraine. This government must go, period. There's also Eric Okusapen who says a good morning to us. Ghanaians want to know from the government what happened to the various petroleum stabilization levies put in place by the NDC to cushion against eventual volatility in prices. Suleiman Abdul Rahim says this is the time economic lectures should have been organized to get solution for hikes in fuel prices. Yet our so-called economic messiah decided to remain silent. Did we go or did we come? And let me end with Gafari Janton, who says, Senna, please greet our Iron Lady for Savannah region and Mama for all of us. The issue of increasing fuel prices day in, day out is due to mismanagement of the economy. During 2020 elections, government was sharing money like Kakai. And then, okay, so those are the messages I'll go through now. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, Sana. I was wondering whether I should even turn up. But maybe I should give it a go. You're talking about rising fuel prices. And I take that to be code for rising prices, stagnant or falling real incomes, and therefore declining standards of living. Now, there are several aspects to this problem. The basis of the problem, the fundamental problem, is that Ghana is a new colony. And our economy is largely controlled by others for their benefit. And the successive government that we've been electing, perhaps the sole exception of Nkrumah, who set out to change that, but he set us on a path to political independence as a basis, as a foundation for economic independence, which threatened the interests of those who would have us on our knees permanently. And so with local reaction, Nkrumah was moved out. And since then, we've been happy to go back to the slave house. There's no issue of national importance that will not turn over to those who have a permanent interest in our being on our knees, for them to have a look at, for them to approve. Now, if those who have a permanent interest in your enslavement must approve what you do, then you're never going to get out of the slave house. And by and large, successive governments come in and they merely act as agents. Not to us. We elect them, but by and large, they don't feel responsible to us. And there's a point I would like to recall. Remember when this conversation was going on about the surrender of our sovereignty to the Americans in the matter of the basing, what do they call it?
Military base.
Yeah, they call this thing the partnership agreement. Yeah, that's the most insulting way you could term it. When Ghanaians were protesting, remember what our president told us? Remember what our president told us? He accused Ghanaians of being anti-American. And you wonder, who elected him? Who is he working for? But that sums up the thinking and the perspectives of those who are in charge of power now. So I'm saying that the fundamental issue has to do with the fact that we are a new colony, and by and large, we are happy to have our economy in the hands of others. And you can do a casual checklist. You can take it from, whether you want to start from gold or whatever, and look at the percentage of the economy that is in Ghanaian hands. For which reason the benefits also flow to Ghanaians. Tiny. That is the fundamental problem. So it really doesn't matter much the competence of the regime, whatever it is, whatever its shape or color is. That is a fundamental issue that we are not addressing. In a certain sense, we need a second independence struggle, so that the original objectives that we have never attained can be put front and center. Of course, the quality of governance also influences the situation. And if you went into the community of herders, they will tell you that cattle are trapped by their horns. Cattle, they are trapped by their horns. Humans, politicians in particular, are trapped by their tongue. What we have right now is a government, a regime that largely lied its way to power, that has come to believe that slogans and managing the media is a way to go. So right now, at every turn, you see that they're getting exposed by things that they themselves have said. The long and short is that our economy has been very poorly mismanaged. Those who went on their knees and told us that, how was it put? My tree is not very good. When really all they wanted to do was to be given custody of the national purse so that they could loot. That was really all it was about. Taking custody of the national chest and doing with it as they pleased. And that is what accounts, but for a lot of the stagnation and the retrogression that we've seen, and which fits into the general clamor about hardship. But in relation to petroleum prices, anybody will tell you that, look, there are factors that are beyond us. World market prices. But there are factors that are within our control in a certain sense. The exchange rate, taxes. But here we are in a situation where we allow the president to put his cousin in charge of our finances. In any civilized place, that would be a problem to begin with. The president's cousin managing our finances. He also doubled as his campaign treasurer. And worse, we've known for many months now, he set himself up in a situation, he and others, set themselves up in a situation where they get a commission when we go and borrow money. I mean, you remember I was saying at the beginning that I was really wondering why I should come and spend my time here. Because it appears to me that the Ghanaian people are very happy. Or rather, let me put it better, that the Ghanaian people are indifferent to the quality of their governance. Because right before our eyes, this crooked bunch stole a second term. Not just that, they shot and killed people on their way to securing the second term. And all is quiet. It's like nothing has happened. Which must mean that people approve of it. or at least at the very least they accept it. So maybe you could say that the Ghanaian people are fully deserving of what they're getting, because there's been no evidence that they have a problem with their current situation. And it manifests in all kinds of ways. All the issues that you're going to discuss this morning reflect that. The Ghanaian people don't really care about the quality of leadership. They can go very far just by the gab, the tongue. And put out a facade that suggests that everything is well. And you go far. If people get out of line, you put a few thugs on them and put them in their place. Whether it's some pesky pressmen or whoever. So maybe we have no business complaining. I'm done.
Thank you, Doc. Let me jump immediately to Mr. Niyabwana.
Hi, Sena. Good to be back here. Greetings to all the panelists on the show and your audience. Well, I would begin by saying that we should analyze the issue and put things in perspective so that there are no distortions in terms of what is happening currently on the market. We have a pricing regime in terms of fuel prices here in Ghana. We know how things also play out on the international market. We need to ask some few questions. In 2020, when demand fell so low, I think oil closed at an average closing price of about $39. Then come 2021, when there was a surge in somewhat demand, because then a lot of nations have opened up from the pandemic, the lockdown. So it came to its normal pricing levels to about an average of $67 to close 2021. 2022, the average closing price is around $92, which is almost about 35% change in pricing. Then we must also look at the other side of this, the price, which is the demand. Is the current issues happening with Russia and Ukraine increased demand or withheld supply? Not necessarily. The figures we see are spot prices. It does not mean that this is the price at which we are buying fuel or the crude oil. That is not the case. Is Ghana buying at a bid price, or Ghana is buying at a spot price? There again, we need to ask ourselves, how much of our crude are we processing, the imported crude? And if the lapses are based on factors of production. If not, and we are bringing finished products, then we also need to ask, where are we sourcing some of these finished products? And why are we expensive compared to the West African, most of our peers within the West African sub-region, and even some at nations without any ports, any seaports. Now, when we look at all these factors, we will come to the conclusion that there is something certainly not tallying up in terms of our price. And with that, we will need to identify why. Is it the dollar which we are able to manage very well? Or is it the factors of acquiring or sourcing some of these products that have become too expensive for us? Proud to the issues on the international stage in terms of the war and all that, our prices were changing. And the arrows were pointing up, not down. We did not have the issues we having now. We haven't. It came some few, probably a month ago. The prices we see on our screen are indicative prices. And I'm not sure that is the prices we are working with. Because there are futures when it comes to some of these trade agreements. We have negotiated prices already. Well, government have not come to tell us what exactly the issue is. So we'll assume that it is the poor management of the currency that has landed us in here. And I have said before that if you fail to manage the currency well, we develop a culture, a bad culture of pricing. And that is what we are experiencing. We are pricing into the future. And that means that if tomorrow I am not sure of getting a certain price in terms of dollars, then I will have to mitigate that by using a higher dollar rate in the computation of price. And that is basically what we are experiencing. Well, people have said to most of the OPEC, the oil producers, that increase your... They said, no, we are fine. We will not. Because there is a reason for it. There isn't a surge in demand. No. Bottom line, it is the responsibility of government to tell us what exactly is happening. It is not the responsibility of an opposition we did not elect into government to tell us. It is not an issue of our history with petroleum prices. No. It is the responsibility of an elected government to tell its citizens that we are facing challenge A, challenge B, challenge C, and therefore bear with us. India, with the level of their population and demand, have had price stability in terms of oil or fuel prices. Why? because they have slashed the excise duty or taxes on fuel. Are we not able to do something like that? And why are we not able to do? If it is possible for a developed or more developed country to do same, yet we don't have that avenue as an opportunity to bring relief to the people, then we ought to ask those in government, why don't we have that opportunity? We don't have that opportunity because we have been reckless with the management of our economy. Come to think of it, as we sit here, government is rather looking for more tax revenue, and rightly so, because we are engulfed with debt, and not just any debt. We are engulfed with foreign debt, which therefore puts more demand on the currency. A lot of pressure is exerted on our currency because now we need more cedis to buy few dollars. And therefore our challenge is not really what is happening on the international market, but it is the reckless nature at which we have managed this economy. Otherwise, government should come and lay bare the figures for us to see. We don't need to conjecture and do all the analysis and all that and why we are here and why we are not here. The figures are there for us to see. And anybody who is observing the market will know that the issues of fuel pricing emanate more from our mismanagement of the economy and therefore the effect of a high dollar rate we are experiencing in this country. How do we go forward? How do we proceed? If it is an avenue for government, which is fuel pricing, to raise taxes, let's ask ourselves, those taxes, what are the effects? What are the benefits? The baller tax, I still can see baller on the streets. Some of the levies that were put in there, the ESLA levy and all that, what have all those ones achieved for us so far? Nothing. Zero. A reduced price in terms of fuel, what would that achieve for the current economy? It makes us more productive by increasing volumes and brings prices down, influencing our inflation figures. Huge aspect of our inflation basket is fuel and food. And therefore, the moment fuel goes up, which is also an ingredient in the pricing of food, then you have these two huge contributors to the inflation basket moving upwards. Therefore, if you need to do something drastic, we would need to look at the taxes, over 45% taxes on fuel. That will move up because of the percentages based on the base price moving up. We should have options to say that we prefer to go this way and not that way. And that again is the responsibility of government, not us. Government clearly have shown by its demeanor, response and character to people who have brought suggestions to it that they are not prepared to listen. But it is an elected government, and therefore they should be prepared to tell us what exactly is going on and not the other way around. So, Senna, this issue about fuel pricing, I think it's about time that those who are in charge of this economy tells us exactly what is going on. It is not enough to tell me that, fuel prices on the international, are you buying based on the spot price or you are buying based on the bid price? Because other countries are not buying with spot price. They are buying from the bid price. So what is wrong? Tell us what is wrong. And the only truth there is that we have mismanaged ourselves, mismanaged our currency, and we find ourselves in here. Now, the cure to this is the very thing that will kill this government. The cure to what is going on is the very thing that will kill this government because of the past rhetorics. For government to tell us, be bold to tell us that we weren't able to manage the economy well, we weren't able to manage the currency well, and therefore we are where we are. It's exactly what will kill this government, and therefore they are not able to come out. They are not able to be honest with the Ghanaian people. If government is honest to us, trust me, the people of this country are not that difficult to bear with this government and make sure that things goes on. But yet, they are unable to do it because of the things they said in the past. And that is where we find ourselves in a lull, where it seems there is nothing going on. I will end my submission by saying that it is not for nothing that we put a government in place. And the government we put in place are responsible to serve us, to communicate to us where there are issues. Other than that, there is really no reason whatsoever for any government to be put in power.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'll come back to you shortly. Just give me a moment. Let me do a few of the messages that are being sent to us. Manokpo says, I vividly remember during Domsor times, former President Mahama went to Parliament to promise Ghanaians that he would solve Domsor, and true to his words, he just fulfilled that promise. So we want the current president to do same. Padukumbe Siga says, I love the sentence. Ghanaians have no business complaining because we deserve what we have gotten as a fake government. Ibrahim Washara says, in Russia and Ukraine, where the war is going on, the fuel price is still the same. In Burkina Faso and Togo, fuel is cheaper twice than in Ghana. Why is this our neighbors? Why? Is our neighbors from another planet of Africa? Audu Musa says the humiliation this super incompetent government had put GM through in terms of the price of petroleum should continue to haunt them. Kobla says, Dr. Percy, the Ghanaians are not happy about the kind of governance they are receiving. However, we are scared of persecution. We are just not bold enough to take the government on. Don't forget about frivolous arrest. In recent time, Master Red Kaswas' minority should stop pulling down and support Nana Bawumia to bring Ghana back to its best track. Thank you very much. Eric Okusepeno, what happens is when we elected Highness to be in charge of goats, what will be the outcome? Mary Neff says the economy of Ghana is in coma. Government should just swallow their pride and go to the IMF for treatment. Leng Chawanate, what the man is saying, can't we use... Okay, I hear you. Suleiman Abdul Rahim says our lawlessness should just remain within us. Else, when we take it to other countries, believe you me, they will handle us well. How can you go and demolish the embassy of a particular country? And okay, so there are some more messages. And the Iheko Guru says, thank you, Prof, for hitting the hammer right on the nail. We should blame majority of Ghanaians that voted this government to power 5 years ago. A lot of people warned us not to vote them to power. We didn't listen. We rather listened to their lies. Now we are suffering. Elizabeth Joyce Akolo, Mr. Chuma, have you forgotten what your president said? He said he was going to reduce fuel prices. Now you're asking the opposition why the opposition are not saying what they will do if they are in power. Have you forgotten your solid economic team and how knowledgeable men you have? Jonah Goba says it looks like the government is only praying for a global misfortune to happen, for them to blame their abysmal and reckless performance on it. Please ask the MPP rep who is collecting $150 from travelers to Ghana in the name of COVID. Will he be speaking this way if it has been the NDC in power? The government must be truthful to Ghanaians. And Susan Apenyo says the petroleum hype being experienced worldwide is a lesson about failure to plan towards our own oil reserves. Why are we not refining our own fuel? What has happened to our oil refinery? Why are we waiting for the situation to get out of hand? Sometimes the solution is right before us, but our high-mindedness does not allow us to use our God-given wisdom. God help us. Calling government or remanding Nado to reopen our borders is a good call, but we should not politicize it because our security men know better than us. I wonder why the NDC minority is always politicizing everything in this country. Aaron from Tamale North said the MPP government has imposed a lot of hardship into the system. The cost of oil prices has been increasing day in, day out is due to the negligence of the MPP government. Our city keeps on depreciating. The government is not taking any step to make life easy for Ghanaians. The government is haughty and pompous. So, Eric, briefly, you said you have some. Yeah, I'll start with
for me, I do this a lot. I mean, I don't mind people preferring divergent views on matters, but I know that for starters, we're all Ghanaians. I mean, I don't think everybody sitting on this platform is Ghanaians. You don't have anybody that's more Ghanaian than the other, and especially for a certain educated class, what you don't want to do is what I term intellectual arrogance and create a certain impression that if you prefer a certain view, it is sacred, it's like almost sacrosanct, and that's what should hold. And I didn't come on this platform to have an ideological debate, and if that was what it was, I wouldn't have come. The reality on the ground is that, you see, if you're making a point, especially when it comes to the economy, I mean, the little economics that I know have some basic tenets and principles. And the moment you attach parochialism, ideological orientation, emotion, and all of that in that, you move away from an economic discussion to a social conversation. These are conversations that we can sit at a bar somewhere and have. But the economics that I know, the economics that I was taught, has some basic indices, right? You cannot have a conversation surrounding an economy and take it out of context. There's no economy that you can evaluate without an environmental analysis. Some is internal, some is external, some are acts of God. We can even have a situation where you have a tsunami and all these are factors that you would have to take into account when you're evaluating a particular situation. And so for me, this whole idea that you move away from what we're discussing in terms of fuel prices and attack a government and even question the intellect of the Ghanaian people in making a decision in a democratic dispensation is wrong. What makes you think that your views or your orientation is the best way, and if a Ghanaian people in a democratic dispensation make a decision, it's wrong. You wait for the 4 years for them to evaluate the performance of that particular government and make a decision. It's happened time immemorial. Now, we cannot have these conversations without going back to history. Right? We all know the things that I probably wasn't born then. We can go into our history books. He was talking about Nkrumah. and now there's a new government, and this government went into elections were stolen, and people were killed, and all of. In a democratic dispensation like that, what do we have? You can't sit there and make certain banal statements like that. And if I want to go back, and the things that people who are still reeling under the stewardship of Nkrumah today. You have families, somebody was put into jail for a supposedly Prevention Detention Act, right? And that the act says that even if you die in prison, you should be buried within 24 hours. We've gone past all that. And you need a generational thinking to take us out of the challenges that we are facing. But if people are still holding on to a certain, if you like, I don't know how to put it, then we will never move on. The reality on the ground is that, yes, the Ghanaian people are having challenges because there's increment in fuel prices, we're having exchange rate differential issues, challenges, and all of those things, right? But the reality on the ground is that, as we speak, we've been having this, everybody on this platform has stated categorically that we've been having this conversation for a very long time, which means that we have to move away from the issues of talking about it and making emotional arguments to the point of doing something about it. Because in all of these conversations, it points to one thing. Well, if it's the MPP government is responsible for that, so let's remove the MPP government. See that if a new government comes into place, all of these things would change. In reality, if you go back to the issues we are talking about, even when the conversation about fuel, when Honorable was making the initial commentary about even Professor Botry and everything. When I was a child, when the Professor Botry and co were reading the budget, do you know what they were reading? They were telling you the prices of beer. We've moved away from that. They were telling the price of how much beer is costing, how much kerosene will cost, how much those will cost. That was the kind of economy they were running at the time. And we've moved away 25, 30 years down the line and say that let's find a way where the economy is open, is liberalized, but we put things in place. Everybody's open to suggestions. But to create a certain impression that some people are more Ghanaian and some people have a certain higher intellectual capacity to appreciate the issues and all that, it's wrong and it's disingenuous as far as I'm concerned.
We'll move on to the discussion on, a few messages that I'm getting personally. I'll come back to those shortly. But this one says, this is from Kojo Chumba. Globalization of incompetence, blame COVID, blame Russia, blame Ukraine, blame the king of Norway, blame my grandmother's pet, blame the chicken under the basket. Meanwhile, there is the economic whiskey. He is busy singing. This is Kojo Chumba then continues. Says Eric, where were the, is it tenements of basic economic indices when John Mahama was president relative to the things people were talking about? Fact, under John Mahama, petrol was 14 Ghana cedis a gallon. Today it's 45 Ghana cedis. Against what Bawumia and Akufo-Addo said. They said they will reduce it. That's coming from Kojo Chumbuafo. Let's move on to the issue of the demolition of the Bulgarian embassy. And I'll start with Hajia, because this matter actually, they were the ones who started talking about it. Started with your ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. So let's start with you, and then we'll move around.
Yeah, thank you, Senna. Thank you. I'm happy to discuss the issue of the Bulgarian embassy, but before I delve into that, I think I just need to indulge me. Let me make a few comments regarding the subject matter that we just finished discussing. I listened to my brother Eric when he was making his submissions, and a particular word kept recurring in his submission: system, the system, and the system. And I believe Ghana has always been governed based on systems. So, since before independence, through to independence till today. I started off my discussion, I didn't want to go into the politics of fuel. I don't do that kind of interrogating issues. I try as much as possible to deal with the issue devoid of political tainting. But when Eric says the NDC side is not proffering any suggestions, giving any alternatives. And in another breath, he says we shouldn't look at this with the spectacles of politics. We should say it's a national issue that we need to. You find that it is not reconciling. His thoughts on one hand, don't politicize it. Another time is convenient to see the NDC. The NDC are Ghanaians. We have the CPP, we have other people, we are all Ghanaians. So everybody will have a position, everybody will have a view when it comes to national issues. The issue of fuel is a national issue, and everybody has a stake in it. So if the NDC says the rate at which we are witnessing these increases is not sustainable and government must act on it, the NDC could only be saying that in good faith. If you take the history of the fuel increment within this year, 2022, that from between 1st January and 1st February, you have 3 increments. The government cannot suggest that we should not talk about it. We should only talk when we have solutions. We are not the people that the NDC, the Ghanaians didn't vote for the NDC to run this country. They voted for the MPP. And we are not going back to rhetoric. If we want to go back to rhetoric, and that's why I didn't start off by quoting anybody. Because some of the things that politicians have said, invariably, have come back to haunt them. And that is where we are. And that is where, for example, Ghanaians today are asking Eric, where is the vice president? Maybe you should tell us why the vice president has suddenly gone very silent. You know, he went very silent when E-levy hit. All along, we were given the impression that he was the economic wig, he was the digitalization agent. And then E-levy came and suddenly vice president, because vice president, candidate vice president had said that taxing Momo was wrong. Then suddenly his government is seeking to tax Momo. What can he see? He can only do himself the decent thing by going quiet. Same with the oil situation. No, let me finish. You know, same with the oil situation. This is May 2015. The candidate Baumia then says, I really, and I quote, I feel really sad this morning for the ordinary Ghanaian, the hardworking people who have to endure the insensitive decision to increase fuel prices at this time, unquote. This is May 2015. Fuel increases, even if it is by the Ukrainian situation, as government is trying to get us to believe, shouldn't the vice president, with the same vein, speaking to Ghanaians and telling us how he's empathizing with us? He hasn't done that. He's gone quiet. December, 3rd December 2016, 4 days to election. This is what the vice president had to say regarding fuel increases in this country. He says, to the taxi and trotro driver who has been hit by high cost of fuel and insurance, you have a chance to vote for change. This is the vice president. But you see, maybe at that time, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, we could forgive him. That maybe he was probably a novice in politics. His presidential candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, who has been involved in the politics of this country from, I think, age 12. I've seen pictures of him with Osajifo when he was a little boy. I've seen pictures of Nanado with Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Has been involved with the politics of this country. He's been in government before. Had this to say, 2 days to election 2016, he said, I have seen some drivers, both private and commercial, struggle to pay for the high prices of fuel and insurance premiums. Vote at Nana Akufo-Addo. This is Nana Akufo-Addo, candidate Akufo-Addo. Today, you are president of this country. Now, let's even take it that it is Ukraine and Putin creating all this dissonance for all of us. What has he said to Ghanaians so far? We don't want the NDC to be the ones speaking to Ghanaians. The NDC didn't cause this situation. The NDC are not in charge of this country. It is the New Patriotic Party with their Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as president. So they need to speak to us. And Senna, to be fair to this panel this morning, one thing has gone through. All we are all saying is that talk to us. Government, let us know what is going on. When you don't let us know what is going on, what do? We'll speculate. We'll insinuate. We will guess. And that is not healthy for our democracy. The government should come and talk to Ghana. They should tell us what is going on. So now going to the Bulgarian issue. You know, I haven't felt this sad before until my attention was drawn to the developments at the Bulgarian embassy. And I got to know about it. I was sitting at the African Union Conference held this week in Accra to discuss the unconstitutional change of government. That was the theme of the 3-day summit that was held here in Accra. When I heard about this development, the first thing that came to mind was the Bulgarian embassy. They are a mission in this country. They are signed on onto the Vienna Convention of International Relations, which Ghana also signed on. Indeed, Ghana was one of the first countries to sign onto the Vienna Convention, 18th April 1961. Ghana signed as a member. And what does the convention say? When you take Article 2B of the Vienna Convention, it is said here, Senna, let me read, that protecting in the receiving state the interest of the sending state and of its nationals within the limits permitted by international law. This is what Article 2B of the Vienna Convention says. Then Article 22 of the Vienna Convention, in very unambiguous terms, says the premises of the mission shall be inviolable. Inviolable means you don't break it, you don't go within it without permission. You cannot do anything that will affect the sovereignty of the state that is occupying that property. The agents of the receiving state may not enter them except with the consent of the head of the mission. This is Article 22 of the Vienna Convention. Very straightforward. You know, a lot of things suddenly are happening in this country. And then when you sit down, you ask yourself, is it deliberate? Is it out of ignorance? Is it out of belligerence? You wonder. We have a president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is a lawyer, who was the foreign minister of this country before, and who was the attorney general of this country. So this individual, if you take all the elements that should be seeking to interpret and upholding this convention that Ghana signed to, has the credentials. There is no doubt about it. You couldn't have been a foreign minister without understanding. It's the basic rule for even basic foreign officers have to avail themselves to the tenets of the Vienna Convention. Attorney General, you interpret the law. You are the lawyer of the state. You know the law. Government, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was in government. And he knows how government operates. How does it happen that an individual developer gets into the property of the Bulgarian embassy, demolishes the property, proceeds to put up new structures on the property, and the development, the issue comes to the attention of government? And government, I heard the Honorable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources yesterday on the news. My brother, the minister, says he's setting up a sole inquirer into the issue and what are the terms of reference to look at how the land, the Bulgarian land, and how it happened that the private developer money. Please, you see, before it got to the desk of the lands minister, the foreign minister and the foreign affairs ministry, together with His Excellency the President, who is the foremost diplomat of this country, the President of this country is the #1 diplomat of this country, should have resolved this matter. It didn't have to get to the lands minister. What is the sole inquirer going to investigate? That the land, the property does not belong to the Bulgarian embassy, that they don't have a lease that is going to expire in 2033, that they didn't go to court and the Supreme Court upheld the decision of the High Court that the Bulgarian embassy owns the property. What is the man Ofuriata? He's another Ofuriata. The Justice Ofuriata. He's another Ofuriata. I didn't check whether he's from Chebi. Maybe he's probably from there. What is he going to look into? This is a straightforward matter. The Bulgarian embassy got the lease for the property, signed, paid off 50 years rent. I am not a lawyer. I haven't been to law school, but I studied some law along my profession. And one of the things we're taught in commercial law was that when you are a sitting tenant in a property and the property is going to be disposed of by the owner, the landlord, you are given the first option to pay. So granted that even the lease has expired, which hasn't expired. The lease doesn't expire until 2033. And the owners of the property want to dispose of it. The Bulgarian mission is the sitting tenant on the property. So the option of sale goes to them first. They have to decline it before. These are the tenants of law. So at every level in this matter, the law has been broken. Is government suggesting to us, is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs suggesting to us that this Dr. Yao Edu Ampoma, who donated 35 motorbikes to the MPP campaign team in Eastern Region in the last election, is bigger than the state of Ghana? Is that what government is telling us? That this individual, who clearly is an MPP, either supporter or sympathizer, is bigger than the state of Ghana? Such that the government is willing and happy to compromise our international standing, to compromise the lives of millions of Ghanaians out there for the sake of this individual. How missions operate, and as I read from Article 22 of the Vienna Convention, every mission anywhere in this world is Ghana. Everywhere Ghana has a mission, 55 missions across the world. Wherever a mission sits, anyone who enters that space, because the head of the mission represents Ghana. So that is Ghana in any foreign land. And the duty or the role of any mission, apart from driving bilateral relations and international relations, is also to seek the welfare of Ghanaians living in any particular jurisdiction. Has government thought about the consequences of this action with the Bulgarians and what it means for the over 1 million Ghanaians outside the borders of this country? Has government thought about it? Has government thought about the cue it is sending out there to other missions in this country? There was a first one, very unfortunate one, with the Nigerian High Commission. And we thought that would have ended some of these nasty things that our government seems to be, engaging in with our international friends and relations. And then suddenly we have Bulgaria. Do we know where next? An MPP, Aparachik, will decide that he wants the property where the British High Commission is situated. Is government thinking about what the implications of this is? The Supreme Court, the apex court of this country, ruled that the Bulgarians have ownership of the property. How is an individual able to violate that ruling and is still walking free? I went there on Thursday with my ranking, and we saw the daughter of the private developer cruising around, patrolling the road, checking what we were doing. The daughter. Are these people suggesting that they are above the laws of this country? Is this government happy to compromise our international standing because of Dr. Edu Ampoma and his property? In any case, is it the only property in this country, or in Accra for that matter, that Dr. Edu Ampoma can seek to develop his whatever he wants to do on? Why can't we show respect to the law? I've said it before, I think I said it on your show, that growing up, we saw and held Nana Akufo-Addo as a champion of human rights and the rule of law. Where have all those credentials suddenly evaporated? And Nana-Addo is becoming somebody that is just become difficult to manage in this country. As president of this country, he is the #1 statesman, the #1 diplomat. Ghana has a consulate in Sofia, in Bulgaria, with a consular general taking care of it. Maybe that is the reason we are not feeling the pressure. If Ghana had a full-fledged mission with a Ghanaian ambassador sitting there, I would have felt sorry for this ambassador. That the pressure that he would have been going through at this time with what we are doing with the Bulgarians in this country. Why do we want to suddenly sacrifice everything that Ghana has stood for? Because Nana Addo Dankwa is the president of this country, and he's decided that he will not work according to the rules. I don't see the role of the lands minister in this matter. It has absolutely nothing to do with the lands minister. Two agencies have to ensure that this matter is resolved and resolved properly. And those agencies are the presidency and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Bulgarians hold a legitimate lease. There is no controversy about the lease. So I don't see how the land minister comes into it. It's the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And when the Foreign Ministry holds a press conference and says they've been trying to get the private individual to sit down and resolve, and he's been eluding them, it tells a lot. It speaks volumes. How the Foreign Ministry cannot call Dr. Edu Ampoma and sit down with him to resolve this matter. He's evaded them. He's not evaded them. No ordinary Ghanaian can do that. No ordinary Ghanaian, none of us sitting here will be able to defy the Foreign Ministry and the presidency if we were caught. Why is this man sitting on the National Development Planning Commission? In addition, that's where he's sitting. With this mindset, where will the NDPC get to? The National Development Planning Commission, Dr. Ampoma is an appointee on that commission. And yet, this is how he's conducting affairs for the state of Ghana. What dividends are we going to gain from his being a member of the commission? We pray that the president will do the right thing. And the president must speak to this issue. The president must put his best foot forward to seek a resolution to this matter so that Ghana can continue to enjoy the accolades that we've had with the international community as a peace-loving country, as a country where even our own selves, we don't offend ourselves, not to talk about foreigners. In our homes, when the stranger comes, we give the visitor the best of treatments. That's what we do, even in our local homes. How can we treat the Bulgarians like this? This is Ghana. This is Osagyefo's Ghana. And this is not the Ghana that Nana Akufo-Addo inherited. He inherited a Ghana that had respect for international conventions, international treaties, and we want him to hand over a Ghana that still respects these treaties. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And well, let me just read. Okay, so this is a story as published by the graphic that Alhaji was talking about. This one is government appoints sole inquirer for Bulgarian embassy land case. And it says a retired High Court judge has been appointed as a sole inquirer to investigate the circumstances surrounding the true ownership of the parcel of land in dispute between the Bulgarian embassy in Accra and a private developer. The government, working through the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, has appointed Justice Kwesi Anto Oforiata, a retired justice of the High Court and one-time chairman of the Ashanti Regional Lands Commission, as the sole inquirer. Now, these are the terms of reference. One, undertake a full and impartial inquiry into the alleged encroachment and or demolition of property on the land being used as the Bulgarian embassy. 2, make appropriate recommendations relating to the land being used as the Bulgarian embassy. 3, inquire into the nature of interest in any land held or occupied by diplomatic missions in Ghana. 4, inquire into any matter relating to land in which diplomatic missions in Ghana have an interest whatsoever. And 5, make recommendations to government. Let me come to Eric.
Well, I think that the issues are very complex. I listened to the ambassador, the Bulgarian ambassador, in an interview, I think it was an Asempa or so. And interestingly, him being a diplomat, he was very clear and straight to the point as to what the issues were. And rightly so was demanding that the state would do something about the issues and then try and find ways to bring some kind of sanity to the situation. And so listening to Ajia again, I mean, you see, sometimes some of these conversations are all vested in a constitution that we've all agreed that we want it to be guided by. For example, if the issue has gone all the way to the Supreme Court and a certain determination has been made, then that same process can be activated to understand why that determination is being violated by an individual. Now, at this point, who that individual is really does not matter. Once you go into, again, the afters, I call it the afters, then you move away from the substance of the matter. Because it's a diplomatic issue, again, you would expect that some communication will come from the foreign ministry, and I know that they've made a statement to the matter, and at least I see that the thing is still ongoing and it's not being resolved properly. So we can activate the processes. So, because if you're not careful, I mean, even if somebody catches a cold, it's because the president has sneezed at the Jubilee House, and try to link every single thing that happens to the presidency. And, I mean, try to even go into issues to do with his human rights credentials and the country going into a certain state where almost everything is in a state of disrepair and chaos and all. You see, again, like I said, if you're not careful, we create a certain impression that the people actually lose a certain respect for the political class. Because all that we do, as far as I'm concerned, is to throw missiles at each other. You understand? I can tell you, I'm not holding any foul. I can tell you a plethora of examples of things that are happening in connection with other diplomats or, institutions in every single government that we've had in this country. But that is not the point. You invited us to discuss this very issue of the Bulgarian matter and how maybe going forward we will be able to find ways of resolving it. Because everybody appreciates the fact that we are signatories to the Vienna Convention. We are supposed to be guided by that particular multilateral agreement that we've signed to. By and large, over the period, I don't think that we've actually done anything to suggest that Ghana is not a country that would go by those rules and regulations. But in any situation, you always have aberrations. Now, when you have aberrations, look at how many embassies and missions that we have in this country, right? And we have a certain aberration, and it becomes almost something that is actually the norm rather than the exception. It just won't be fair commentary for me, even from my personal perspective, I think that it's one of the things that would need urgent attention of the powers that be, so that we can bring some kind of clarity to the matter. And I'm happy. I listen to the ambassador himself, you know. And sometimes when you listen to, I listen to ambassador, listen to Ajia right now. It's like almost somebody that's crying more than the bereaved. And he was appreciative of the system that we have locally, and he was confident that whatever processes that has been activated, we can still use the same internal measures that we have locally to resolve the issues, right? And so, I mean, that's my view on the matter.
Thank you. And I just got, we were talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and this is what they have to say. And they are saying, quote, government has got no hand in whatever the developer is doing. And they said the ministry has also formally notified the Minister of Justice and Attorney General to take appropriate action on the encroachment of the property. So those are just two quotes from some of the comments they've had to make on this matter. Ojochumbwafo is back. Says on the mischaracterization of the much maligned Prevention Detention Act, it was anti-terrorist. It was an anti-terrorism law. You can use every reason. A law to stop the terrorists that unleashed Matimihu separatist terrorists led by Bafo Akoto and his ilk. When Nkrumah was deposed by the CIA, led Dankwa Busia, led usurpers, did they prescribe the PDA? Did the Dankwa Busiais not replace it with MESA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act? And I continue to say, Sana, where are the police? This is a straight-up police case. Why have the police not arrested Dr. Edu Ampoma? This is the same Dr. Edu Ampoma who is busy testifying against Dr. Upuni in a criminal trial whilst he goes on committing a crime. And then he continues to say, why do you need a commission of inquiry into a criminal act? A Supreme Court ruling is being violated with impunity. If I had done what Edu Ampoma is doing, would I not have been arrested immediately? Another inquiry whose recommendation will be met with a useless white paper disavowing the recommendation of the same. Does a certain Ayawaso West Wagon come to mind? That's coming from Kojochumbwafo. This one is from Ambassador Sampiale, who says, in accordance with the Vienna Convention, the property of an embassy is immune to local laws. Even if the mission was on the land belonging to a private developer, it was the duty of the state to have acquired for the mission. This is the second time Ghana has demolished the property of diplomatic premise. The first was Nigerian High Commission. We must be careful we do not suffer reprisals. If you sow the wind, you should be ready to reap the whirlwind. Eric, which part of the world have you ever heard of private persons having the audacity to pull down diplomatic properties? The
embassy itself had activated a process, gone all the way to the Supreme Court. You see, sometimes, I mean, this is not politics. Sometimes, I mean, some of these things, as far as I'm concerned, are very basic and simple. Gone all the way to the Supreme Court, right? No. You see, but you can allude, you can make allusion to government on every subject. But the point is that once that has been activated and it's gone through a legal or a judicial process, the matter can be resolved. Now, if you listen to what the ministry has said, the ministry has stated categorically that the government has no hand in the matter, and those agencies should investigate and bring why the person has gone to encroach the land. It's almost as if that you could have prevented the act from happening. How? Well, no, the person has done that. Then there are remedies in place. There are sanctions in place. There are things that we have in place to deal with anybody that is found to be in abeyance with the law. Let's move on, and let's not make all these what do you call? So Kojo says that because the man is a witness against an Opuni case. Somebody says that he's on NDPC. Somebody says that he has gone to donate motorbikes to, and all of those things. So what? The reality on the matter is that we all agree that nobody's above the law.
Let me go through the rest of my messages. This there was a easy to hold grudge. Try to pay someone back, ignore them, and make them suffer. But all that it does is to hold you down emotionally. Okay, thank you for that. Mystic in Sawam says the Nanado Dr. Baumia led government has lost credibility, and Ghana is in this unbearable economic hardship today due to their mismanagement of the economy, reckless borrowing, and extravagant expenditures. Nanado should stop living like an Arabian king and cut down the profligacy. Never again to this insensitive, corrupt, treacherous, and clueless government. Hadi from Pig Farm is joining us, says the most incompetent president in the history of Mother Ghana is Nanado, yet some people are happy with what the man is doing. It's about time we, the people of Ghana, realize our potential and allowing him to exploit the resources of the country with his family and friends. The painful aspect is some people will still support the ill utterances of this family and friends government. Meanwhile, they don't have anything to depend on. The future of Mother Ghana is in crisis under this wicked, super incompetent and substandard family and friends government. Allah save Mother Ghana. That's from Hadi from Pig Farm. Idi Gideon is joining us. This government and its leadership is never willing to take responsibility and admitting their shortfalls, hence blaming everything available to them to exploit, such as John Mahama, NDC, Free SHS, COVID, now President Putin, and many others yet to emerge. It is time we got to be honest to the fact as they are. We are sinking down together. Government must be held accountable to the people in fairness. Musa Batwa is also joining us. Senna, we've been presented a list of economic wizards that constituted an economic management team in 2017. For the avoidance of doubt, they are Dr. Mahamadou Baumia, Professor Jan Bafo, Dr. Kotose, Dr. Free Akoto, Honorable Alan Chemantin, Boache Jako, Ken Furiata, and Yasafo Mafo. If we go by this logic, the current economic quagmire is caused by these people. Therefore, they must be arrested and arraigned before court to answer by dollar and fuel prices, because dollar and fuel prices are killing Ghanaians. That's coming from Musa Abatwa. There's also Tafa in America who says, if oil prices go up at the international market, are we not also benefiting from our crude oil? We're exporting. Why can't they use the more money they make due to high price of crude oil they export to subsidize the prices?
I've listened to Ajia and also what Eric has to say. And I must say that it is not just simple as we have made it look like. I think the Vienna Convention goes beyond that. And the same Article 22, Sub-Article 2, clearly puts government in charge of the protection of the premises. And I read, the receiving state is under a special duty to take all appropriate steps to protect the premises of the mission against any intrusion or damage, and to prevent any disturbance of the peace of the mission or impairment of its dignity. So not just the damage, but its impairment. And this responsibility is on the receiving state. It is not enough to say that, oh, everything we attack the presidency. Yes, it is an executive presidency. And that is why we will put everything at its doorsteps. The other issue you would want to look at is our trade balance with Bulgaria. In 2019, Ghana exported over $4 million worth of articles to Bulgaria, whereas Bulgaria export to Ghana was a little over 2 million. That tells you that we have about 1.8 million in terms of trade surplus. And therefore, when you would want to do certain things, I think you should take notice of such issues. Look, let's be frank with ourselves. You can hide a 2 months pregnancy. But you cannot hide an 8-month pregnancy. And that is what we are seeing. The impunity did not start with foreign missions. We have over the years endured this locally. There are people in the presidency who takes people's land, and you cannot say a thing. The police can't say a thing, and the judiciary cannot say a thing. And it is happening. It is ongoing as we speak today. I'll give a prophecy. That prophecy, I normally don't do that, but today permit me to give a prophecy. That the impunity in which individuals within this government are taking lands from people, when change arrives, that same impunity will be used to retrieve those lands, and the police or whoever is in power will say nothing, especially in Greater Accra. And I know what I'm saying because I'm a Ga. And my favorite prayer is that that day will come. That day will come. Look, government is supposed to prevent the entry into the land. Government is not supposed to resolve issues. It is not the responsibility of government to go resolving issues and using the taxpayers' money to elect someone as a sole whatever to go and resolve issues. I also listened to the Bulgarian ambassador who is stationed in Nigeria, and it was clear that the president was aware of the situation. They have reported it directly to the president. So it is not enough to say, well, this is an issue that would be resolved. We should. In the instance of this case, it was not supposed, and it is not even a responsibility of the Bulgarian embassy to go all the way to the Supreme Court. It is the responsibility of the receiving state to ensure such occurrences are not happening. Again, it is not enough for a foreign ministry to say that government is not involved, only to distance yourself in there. Because the responsibility is yours to ensure that they are protected to the level that they will not even be impaired. You cannot go and build a wall across the street where it operates to impair the activities or the premises. It is to that extent the responsibility for which Ghana signed on to. But this is not something, again, we started just with the international or the foreign missions. This is something that individuals in this country have to endure with and deal with them. And it is happening all over, and especially in Greater Accra. People in the presidency and in government are grabbing lands. And you dare not talk. You cannot take them to court. You cannot do anything. Even with all your documentations, the police are not able to ensure that the right things are done. And I will not speak for long. I will only emphasize my prophecy that the impunity in which people are doing things today, the same impunity will be used to correct those things when change arrives. I end my submission.
Well, thank you. A few messages again. Prince Henry Koforidua is saying Dr. Bawumia should just come out and apologize to Ghanaians for his abysmal and unprecedented mismanagement of Ghana's economy. Dr. Bawumia, where a liter of fuel is more than 10 Ghana cedis and the dollar has crossed the 8 mark. The future is pregnant. Thank you. another one that was sent in a bit earlier. Abbas Amogobo in Ofinsu says, where is Dr. Baumia? From economic wizard to digital man, I'm highly disappointed in this regime. The hardship is unprecedented. We are all suffering because of the poor handling of the city. Realities have captured this government. Everything is in a mess, you see. And I think I read it. Okay, seriously, the government economic management team is needless and a waste of... Okay, I think I've read this a bit earlier. Thank you for those messages you've sent to us. Let me say a big thank you to our affiliate radio stations across this country. A big thank you to Sela Radio in Dabala. A big thank you to China FM in Akachi. A big thank you to I understand Matambo is no longer up and running yet. Diamond FM in Tamale is picking us live. A big thank you to Hills FM in Ketekrachi, Nyawasi Radio, also in Ketekrachi. And a big thank you to several other affiliates that are currently tuning to us. And a big thank you to our 2 affiliates in the central region, which is, I think that's escaped me anyway. Let me jump to Dr. Percy, I'll come back.
Thank you, Senna. Maybe I should just, a couple of things. What's the name of the lady?
Haji.
Yeah, I believe you're an MP. Sue. Oh, Suera. Okay, great. I'm asking now so that it doesn't interrupt my flow subsequently. I believe you're Mr. Eric Chum. Yeah, because I see you jousting with my brother Kwesi occasionally. And then this is me. Me, your boy. Okay, great. I didn't get that. It's okay. But something you just said is a bit pregnant. But I think that he hit the nail right on the head. We have a situation where we have a president and the government who have no responsibility. That is why it is possible for Mr. Erickson to say that why should people look to the president? That was your inference. Now, the Ghanaian people employ a president. We employ them. We employ government. And to go back to the earlier conversation, they owe it to us to be truthful. But it involved a massive con to win power. And all these issues that we see merely reflect that reality. But back to the present issue. Like he said, my brother just said, it's not the business of government to look to resolve any issue. They had a responsibility to ensure that it didn't happen in the first place. And as for this, is a one-man committee?
Yeah, sole inquiry.
It is to buy time so that the matter can be quietly shelved. We see, at the heart of this matter is our president is the very embodiment of impunity and lawlessness. Our president is the very embodiment of impunity and lawlessness. I don't know whether you're familiar with this motto. I don't know which section of our military carries it, but they say he who dares wins. I'm not sure which section of the military, but I think one of them, one of the regiments, one of them. And the fact that this is happening suggests that this, I heard this thing for the first time yesterday when I was listening to, I think, Sami Okujetu Abrakwa, who mentioned the name of is Dr. Yao Eduempuma. Okay, said that he was a member of the MBPC. Clearly, he's a prince in the MPP. Or this year. And if he's done, he's done. And there are many other princes in that party. Like he's predicted, nothing will happen. At the very worst, the Ghanaian people will pay up for the cost of replacing and doing good what has been damaged. As has happened in the case of the Nigerian property that was demolished. So you and I, our meager taxes, will go to pay for that foolishness, that lawlessness. It has been going on and on and on and on. That really is the heart of the matter. I won't waste my time talking plenty. The impunity and the lawlessness. It accounts for many things. That's the reason why the people who executed, what's the name of the guy, Ameswali, will not be pursued and arrested and brought to justice. That's why the people who arrested and manhandled the Ashanti security coordinator, they got off. Well, our president himself, under his watch, orders the seizure and burning of excavators against the law. And he says openly that if you care, go to court. When he knows he has packed the court. There was a small matter, that was brought up by Mr. Chum. I don't know whether he had issues with the point I made about the theft of the election, because the theft was done in plain sight. The theft was, I can give you particulars. The theft was done in plain sight. It first of all involved the packing of the courts, the Supreme Court. Then it involved the replacement of the electoral commissioner with an MPP activist who subsequently threw out of the window, she trashed and threw out of the window the consensual arrangements that have been made for making changes to the electoral arrangements. They introduced a layer of opacity, regional coalition. Our court had some bizarre and strange reason, said that birth certificates were not good to go. But the court was an active participant in the erection of the framework for sealing the election. So I was surprised that the NDC went to court asking them to allow the NDC to expose what had happened. It was not going to happen because they were participants in the theft. All these things happened in plain sight. None of it was hidden. And as for this thing about the Nkrumah and the PDA, you see, for a very long time, it's come to a crescendo under the presidency of Nana Akufo-Addo. The MPP has been busy in hiding its terrorist past. Now, to do that, you must distort our history. In doing so, you also have to hide your history. So, for instance, you will not hear anybody in the MPP talk about their true founders of their tradition. It's not the UGCC. The true founders of their tradition is the NLM. They cannot even mention it. Except that I think about, it's not a year yet, but there was an assembly in Kumasi on the occasion of this Ria Koto matter, when the Agric Minister was making claims, sending a message to the people in the Jubilee House about the true owners of their party. And I smiled a bit. Because all this time, they've inquired about the real roots of their party. The NLM, Matimiho politics, separatism, federation, terrorism. We drove all the steps of Nkrumah, from the avoidance of discrimination law that banned the formation of ethnic, regional, religious parties. Although the MPP has demonstrated that you can form an ethnic party with a national spread. Down to the PDA. In the wrong turn of the one-party state. Nkrumah and his advisors erroneously thought that if they had a one-party state, it would bring in all the people who had knowledge, who were outside the CPP, so they could pull together. What he did was to bring the sickness into the house. You can go on and on about that. But the simple truth is that I speak about our current situation, the fact that we're a new colony. Now that is a fundamental issue. Why would we will always be in debt? Our currency will constantly depreciate, and we will never be able to make our ends meet. We will always be in debt. Our currency will constantly depreciate. And it doesn't matter the skill of the managers. You can never cut it. That is a fundamental issue. That is what we have to deal with. That is the fundamental. The other point I can make about that is that if you look at the political scene, the MPP are clearly not for that, changing that situation. I don't see much of an alternative in the NDC either. Which means that some people must step up to the plate and offer Ghanaians real choice about this particular matter, this central matter. None of the parties on the block right now have demonstrated any capacity, first to comprehend and to lead us out of this quagmire. So we would always be engaged in lamentations, which is why I don't want to come onto this your set again. The business of lamentation is not something that throws me, but that is what we have to do. Actually, it calls for a new perspective, a new platform, a new vehicle. that can make Ghanaians masters of their destiny. Not servants of other people's interests.
Thank you. Thank you. So now let me say a big thank you to Cape FM and Benya FM. Those are the stations that are currently tuning to us live in the central region. Thank you very, very much. Radio Kitao is also in Saboba. A big thank you. Boa Radio in ENT. And a big thank you to all the other affiliates that are currently offering us their platform to broadcast live. A big thank you to all of you, especially to 92.3 FM here in the Greater Accra region. A few more messages sent to me before we come to the next discussion we have to do with the opening of the land borders. Komla Genya says, is the MPP man Eric trying to justify the killing of 8 people during election because some people were sent to jail under PDA for carrying out terrorist attacks on Nkrumah and the citizens of Ghana? Where was he when Akufo-Addo, Bawumia and MPP were castigating Mahama government? Ghana will never progress with this kind of hypocrisy. That's what Komla Genya says. Okay. There's also some of those messages. Abib Mantos is saying good morning to you and your wonderful panelists. When lawlessness and tyranny becomes a norm, resistance is a duty. How can this government and its appointees have the impudence to be demolishing diplomatic missions house? Diplomatic missions. First the Nigerian and now the Bulgarian embassy. What cry is this land grabbing left, right, and center? They've taken Ghana back to the days of colonialism. Ghanaians are suffering. We deserve better times ahead. We deserve better times ahead. The economy is in coma. Everything is skyrocketing. Ghanaians are wallowing in abject poverty. We cannot feed 3 times a day. Yet our wicked government wants to steal our last peso in our Momo wallet. Ghanaians, let's resist oppressors' rule. Our forefathers were not cowards, and we won't be coward. We won't show cowardice under Nana Akufo-Addo. Sam Piale is saying currently a private developer has developed a high building overshadowing the Switzerland embassy on the Hot FM traffic light. The Swiss ambassador started complaining vehemently to the president to no avail. The India High Commission has for a very long time been requesting for the land between the India Commission and the M Plaza Hotel to expand its premises to no avail. Even this empty land is housing criminals right behind an Indian High Commission. That's coming from Ambassador Sampiale. So those are some of the messages you're sending to us. Let's get the issue of the land borders and the need to open those land borders. I have 30 minutes more to go to end the show. So this time around, I'll start with Mia Boy on that issue.
That led to the closure of the borders, and that is basically to do with the pandemic. And it was right decision then to have closed down the borders to contain the pandemic. It's been quite a while now, well over a year and some months since the borders were closed. We all know the economic activities that happens between us and our neighbors, and also the aspect of our social discourse with some of these villages around the borders. Families go across the borders and all that, and therefore it comes at a certain discomfort to actually close down the borders. What we must ask ourselves is that what is the situation in terms of the pandemic with those other countries we share common borders with, and if the risk is that high compared to those that we do not share land borders with, in the sense that we are allowing people to travel freely through air, to our various airports without any form of restrictions as we have in our land borders. If the disease or the pandemic or the virus as we know it to be, it's more of an imported one, not from basically African countries, but basically from China, Europe, and other places. Therefore, we stand a greater risk in having people or having our airports opened and closing down our landed borders. The issue with this comparison is it because we can take or manage the traffic that comes into our airports than we can do to the traffic that goes through our landed ports. In any case, the truth of the matter is that people are using alternative routes to trade and go to and fro most of our neighbors. And that is the truth. And therefore, what you seek to prevent is really not there to prevent. Yet, most of the situations we have had are coming from our airports. In terms of putting measures on our borders to ensure that, look, people who get in and out are tested, I think we have shown that we are capable of doing that, except to do with the costs, which we cannot migrate the same costs from our various airports to the landed borders. It would not make economic sense. It will still be a burden and a huge restriction moving in and out. Since the closure of the borders, and I think it is somehow a conduit to try and, for me, this is what I see it to be, to try and control certain articles that comes into this country rather than to control the virus. Yet, this has not saved the textile industry. The textile industry is still suffering. What we seek to prevent, for me, is some trade issues rather than the virus. But let us all face reality. The issues with our textile industry is because we have collapsed a whole cotton industry in the northern region. And it is not really about the influx of other goods coming from the other similar goods coming from or textiles coming from these other borders, or smuggling that goes out of these borders. Now, we were here when we were told that donkeys are able to travel across the borders with our fertilizers. and that notwithstanding, we still feel that, okay, it is right to hold down or close these borders. Economically, we are suffering. Those along those borders are suffering. Traders who have their source in these countries are equally suffering. The other aspect of it is that people are able to travel to this country via air. So is it also, again, the issue about the charges that we would obtain in terms of the test, the antigen test, which is not really a test that can actually protect us in that scenario. So this whole thing must be looked at, and I think it is overly due to actually sit down, have some sober reflections on what we stand to lose in closing these borders or having these borders closed. Again, I don't think the other side have complained in terms of Togo, Ivory Coast. I don't think they have complained. And I don't think I have stopped seeing trucks moving towards Burkina Faso, Togo, and Ivory Coast. So where are these trucks using? And the unapproved routes they are using, are we able to collect the necessary tax? We are not. Government should tell us how much it will spend in terms of the control measures with most of these neighboring countries, as against the revenues that we rake in from these various borders. You cannot purport to close the border and still employ SERPS officials at these borders for whom we still have to pay. I think it is about time we look at the pros and cons, we look at the benefits and the disadvantages these bring to us. And I think if we should do that, we will come to a firm conclusion that it is about time that these borders are opened. Now, I like the phrase the president was using to address us back then, what the science and data was telling us. And he will make the case that it is not a decision taken out of void, but it is decisions being taken based on the science and data. As of today, what is the science and data telling us? Most of these countries, have we seen an escalation of the virus? Or it has been controlled? Internally, what is the data telling us? Again, what is the economic data telling us as well in terms of trade activities on these various borders? I think it's about time the government lay bare some of these issues and let us all appreciate where we need to move towards in terms of these borders, because it is just not right to have these borders closed, yet our various or our airport is widely open for almost everybody. In the moment you are able to pass an antigen test. I think we have not made a case for the continuous closure of these borders, and it is time to open these borders up.
Thank you. Haji.
Land borders. I think, and I'll say this in direct reference to Eric, if there is one consistent voice that has been very coherent and vociferous in persuading government to consider reopening the borders, it's been Parliament, and it's been the side of the NDC. I recall two of my colleagues, the Honorable MP for Jomoro, made a statement. I think twice she's made statements on the floor of Parliament regarding the opening of the land borders in her area. Similarly, my colleague Honorable Jifa Gomashi, who is MP for K2 South, has also made statements on this particular subject matter in Parliament. Tuesday, our leader of the NDC caucus, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, addressed the press in Parliament and also added his voice to persuading government to look at the borders, the land borders. So clearly the issue of the land borders is something that a government has to begin to address its mind to. And why has the call become an everyday thing so far? We think that yes, for good reason, the borders were closed when at the very height of the COVID pandemic. And we saw the Delta strain, we saw the Indian strain, and I think around November last year we saw the Omicron. And when the Omicron hit, many scientists suggested that it could well be the game changer for the COVID pandemic, in that they said research shown that it was going to sort of curtail the other variants that had come previously, and that once the Omicron came, once you contract Omicron, which was a lesser, more deadlier than the previous ones, the chances of contracting Delta or India was very limited. And I think by all intents and purposes, we've seen a certain downward, surge of the pandemic. We would realize that we moved from some weekly. There was a time we had daily updates from the National Health, Ghana Health Service Center, data on infections, on the number of deaths, and then they moved to weekly, and now suddenly we're not getting that information anymore. My late father used to say, no news is good news. So maybe Ghana Health Service have come to the point where they think that we have effectively managed to contain COVID. Of course, that did not happen in a vacuum. We recognize that we had the vaccines coming, and most Ghanaians availed themselves to the vaccine. So most Ghanaians took the first, second shots and boosters. So we can say that we are sort of protected against this infection. So when you want to address the question of the continued closure of the borders, I think we need to take into account the current situation of the COVID itself. And if everything suggests so far that we've managed to bring it under control, I think then it's time to make a good case for the reopening of the borders. The continued closure of the borders is creating real hardship, especially for people who live within communities around the border, the land borders of this country. I mean, most of them engage in trading. Somebody, for example, wakes up in the morning and makes a pot of Hausa cocoa, and that's what she will sell to passengers both ways. I mean, crossing in and out. And so if by the closure of the borders she's not able to undertake that business, we know the impact of that on her family. So if the situation is such that the borders can be open so people can go about their businesses normally, why not? The movement of goods and services. We know that there's this market around the Tudu where they sell all these days. They call it Togo market or something. I think young people in this country patronize it a lot to buy their fashion clothes and things that are brought in from Togo. If suddenly that is no more available and they have to look elsewhere into another market, that increases their expenditure in those areas. For the women and young people engaging in trade activities, it's clearly impacting on their own revenue and income. So I think it is time that government, unless government has some other information that we don't have. And I think we go back, that takes us back to the issue of government not talking to us. Government should let us know. Otherwise, from where we sit and from our perspectives, we think that it is time that the borders are open, if for nothing at all, so people can move freely, goods and services can move freely, and people can engage in their daily economic activities around the border centers. In terms of the airports and why, if the borders are closed, the land borders are closed, why are we still flying in and out? And we have almighty Frontiers sitting at the airport, taking $50 per Ghanaian, $150 per non-Ghanaian to undertake COVID test. What that suggests is that we still think that COVID is still on the high radar. So if that is the case, why are people not allowed to also go through the borders? Put the same facility there. Get people coming through the border to test. Have them take the test, and then if they are found negative, they go about their business. If they test positive, some arrangements can be made to contain them or return them to where they are coming from. I want to believe that our neighbors in the West African sub-region within the ECOWAS have all gone through these COVID vaccinations. Unless we are suggesting that we are the only country that did vaccines and the others, government, that's why governments talk. The Interior Minister, I'm sure, talks to his counterpart in Togo, in Nigeria, so that you share this information and then you have a comprehensive outlook of what the situation is to make you be in a position to make an informed decision on reopening the borders or keeping it closed. We need to be told that. Otherwise, I am for government working hard to open the borders in the shortest possible time so that Ghanaians and people traveling, not everybody has the means to travel by air to Nigeria. Others go by road to Nigeria. What does it mean for them? We need to take all of that into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Haja. Before I come to Eric, just one or two messages. And I think the demolition of the Bulgarian embassy was an act of war, and the guy behind it must be in jail right now. What if the embassy retaliates and demolishes our consulate in Bulgaria? The gentleman was saying it's not a matter of government must come again. Wasn't the government who signed the international agreement on our behalf? Abna Pokuya Aka says, Doc is speaking the truth. The founders of the MPP tradition are not the UGCC. It is the NLM. Just a simple truth, and I'm stunned when MPP refer to UGCC as the founders of their tradition. Eric?
Well, I mean, I think that when it comes to any decision, public policy-wise, after a time, you would necessarily have to review that particular decision that has been made or that policy move. So, I mean, I would not have a problem at all with people calling for some kind of review of the issues. And if it points to the situation where opening the borders would not impact us negatively or even create more challenges for us, I mean, why would anybody resist that? I think that there's a very clear appreciation of the fact that the people who especially live around the borders basically make a livelihood along the border and activities that, I mean, transpire over there. And so it's not lost on anybody. What really is also important is the reasons why that decision was taken in the first place, where you have a situation where the most vulnerable of our people probably would have been the ones that would have been affected if we had not taken that decision initially. But like, I mean, everybody's talking about if the statistics now points to a situation where we can do that, or we can put measures in place to ensure that even if it's opened, we will not get back to a situation where we're struggling with a certain influx of people, and then there's a certain surge in the numbers, and then that has a whole ripple effect on your health system, on security, and all sorts of things. And so, and for me, I do not like to discuss these issues out of the context that we find itself. But the reality on the ground is that, yes, when it comes to these matters, especially when it comes to government decisions or public policy, you always have a certain group of the people who would be unduly affected. But sometimes this is things that happen because then for the generality of the people, we all sort of protected, you know. So I would not sit anywhere to say that people who are calling for the reopening of the borders are wrong and that they don't have a case or what. But then I think that we have the right systems in place, authorities that are put in place to sort of deal with these issues. We have a whole COVID-19 response team. We have an advisory team that advises the president and all that. So once we are all able to have an overview of what the issues are and the situation is, I can say categorically that it's not even in government's interest to continue, closing the borders. Because everybody talks about the economic activities and all that, apart from the economic activities, social ones. We have families that basically traverse, somebody has a kitchen here and then has a bedroom there. And so there are all sort of implications. Nee made reference to the movement of goods. The reality is that from day one, the movement of goods has never been affected, because the pronouncement was that it will still allow for the movement of goods, for trade to happen. What hasn't happened is the individuals being able to go across. But when it comes to issues to do with traffic, the tracks and the movement of goods across various countries, that has always been in place from day one. And it also has categorically the persons are supposed to be allowed in and all of those things. So for me, I think that hasn't really been affected. It's the people who have, if you like, the petty traders that Alhaji alluded to, and a few others that would have business here and come back and sleep and all that, that probably would be unduly affected. But I'm open to having a certain conversation and clarity as to what the issues are and why is there that we still have a continuous closure of the borders. And then if it comes out that we have to reopen the borders, or even we have to put certain things in place to ensure that we can even allow, maybe we can graduate it, allow a certain group of persons to come in, and then gradually being able to understand the situation and how it even impacts the general population, then we can go ahead and have a full opening. You see, the thing about these governance systems is the complexity of it. I remember a situation where when it hit, and they were just called by some elements that, we should go to China and bring in all the students who were there in the heat of the pandemic. So it's one thing. So can you imagine that you do not have a certain clarity of thought, and there's a certain conviction in terms of how you go by the process. And then we had gone and brought on in these students, and then all of a sudden in the various communities that they've come to, there's like a huge upsurge in the cases. So these are things that, for me, we need to manage properly. And if there's a certain pressure on our health delivery system and all of those things, we will not be able to deal with the issue. So let's tarry cautiously. That's my view. Cautiously, but again, I don't see anything wrong with reviewing that particular decision.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. A few more messages before I come to Doc. Doc, pardon me, briefly. Julie Belinda Aubrey says, here in the UK, we have stopped wearing face mask and COVID test at the airport no more. Udeduje says, there are some Ghanaians who commute to and from work in Togo, and there are some Togolese children who travel across the border to attend school in Ghana. There's Mohamed Abdul Razak Ali, who says, I think it is time for Parliament to vote for the restriction of the powers to be taken from the president that the British Parliament gave to Boris. There's also Jose, who says, Senna, the borders were not closed because of COVID, according to Katie Amon. It was to prevent Togolese coming to vote in Ghana and to punish them for previous occurrences. And then there's Brian Bryant, who says, Madam, stop advocating advertising for, said Alhaji was advocating and advertising for the frontier company to be set up across our borders before the borders are open. Instead of you to advocate for the cancellation of this TV from Citizen, you are I hear you. Those of them abroad don't take it kindly at all, that they have to pay $150 when they are coming in, especially when they are coming with the passport of the country they are coming in from. Doc?
Yeah. The texter sent some message to you just now, suggesting that the closure of the border was not driven by the data and signs of COVID.
Yeah, I think that's Jose.
Yeah. And the border, actually, I predicted that the border would never be opened. I'll be surprised if it is open. I don't think COVID was the issue. To the MPP, the people at the border are not really Ghanaians. It was really about the Volta border. Of course, it would be difficult to keep that closed and open others. So all others are roped in. They are not an important constituency. They have no weight in the MPP calculus. As far as they are not part of this country. And they had a perfect setup, a monopoly at the airport, private monopoly sponsored by all accounts, by the president. Because you had a situation where the Minister of Health could not tell us what was happening. The Minister of National Security could not tell us. I believe the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Defense. They were reduced to telling barefaced lies to cover the fact that the guy himself superintending this establishment of an arrangement using state facilities, public facilities, resources for private profiteering. And this criminality has lasted, I don't know for how many months. How many months? 2 years, yes. I remember I made a point earlier that really, I think that the people of Ghana have no business complaining. Because they went into this thing with their eyes fully open. No surprises from my end, none whatsoever. One of the prominent advisors of the government said that why there are people who live in regions which have no resources. This gentleman is supposed to be an economist. He can say that people who live in places with no resources. And I say, what? People who have land? Do they have land? How can any economist say that if you have land, you have no resources? but really they don't form the core of Ghana. They don't matter. Maybe someone has had a dream and believes that, well, they've made enough money, so they can relax the monopoly a bit and allow the poor. Another thing, this government is not about the poor people of this country. It didn't come for them. It's not here because of on their account. Which is the reason why throughout the first term, he constantly asks people to go and see John Mahama for the solution of their problems. Because that was not why they came. And even in this glorious second term, occasionally I still hear them blaming the NDC for their incompetence and their lack of capacity to deal with our problems. They went through the first term doing that. And they got elected, or quote unquote re-elected, albeit under the barrel of the gun, but they got re-elected. So I expect that this thing would continue in the same vein for a while. I'll be truly surprised if they go ahead and this thing, but really, it's not the data, it's not the science of COVID. COVID merely provided cover for various things to be done. I mean, COVID has been a true windfall for this regime. And I get the sense that, left to them, Ukraine will also be another cover. So all kinds of problems will be loaded onto the problem flowing from Ukraine. That proxy Third World War between the US and its vassals and Russia to the last Ukrainian. But that's another matter. I know that it's not on our agenda. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Well, Nalamino Datalamte is also saying that we are not using face mask in Norway anymore. Kojo Chumbuafo is suggesting that the hurried commission of inquiry is to stop the police from arresting the man who pulled down the Bulgarian embassy. If someone breaks down your house illegally, is it not the police that acts to stop it? And that's the question he's asking. And also, I'm finding out that, okay, so this is one of the messages on Facebook. Nana Dakwa Dodo says, greetings to the next national organizer of the MPP, Eric Amwakuchun. He's surely the next to lead. I didn't know you were a contestant to be organizer.
Well, I am.
Oh, how's the organizer?
No, national organizer.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a huge position.
Is it?
Yes. How is that going?
Well, it's going well. I think that we all, political parties are supposed to be, if you like, architects of a certain national agenda. And so what pertains within that particular political party still has a certain orientation when it comes to what happens at the national level. And now that there's an opportunity, the current national organizer has expressed that he's not going to. So what it means is that there's a vacancy, there's a void that needs to be filled. And talking to my people, and of course with a personal conviction, okay, I believe strongly that I have what it takes to organize a party for victory and beyond.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
A big thank you to Hajia for coming today. It's always a pleasure to see you. Hajia Zuera Ibrahim.
Nice to meet you,
Ibrahim is a member of Parliament.
Fudu Nusu. I speak a bit of Gonja. I'll tell you about that.
And a big thank you to Mr. Nia Boyana, who is a financial analyst, and Dr. David Percy. They saved us this morning. Doc is a student of history and politics. It's been a while since I saw him. Nice to see him this morning, Doc. And thanks for coming. A big thank you to you who joined us on this show
today, and for sending your message and sharing your thoughts with us. A bigger thank you to our affiliate stations across the country. A big thank you to Ahunto 92.3 FM, Volta 1 TV, and of course, Global FM in Ho. A big thank you to all of you. God bless all of you. We are back same time next week with another edition of the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. In the meantime, let me wish Mr. Pratt a speedy recovery and say a good afternoon to you. We are done.
He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people.
Hi, my name is Amma Pratt, Executive Director for Obasima Summit. I would like to invite you to come along with us to the Northern region for the Northern Regional edition of the campus tour. So we are having these conversations around, various regions, various campuses around the country, conversations around our theme for the year, which is progressive portrayal, building capacity for elevation, so specific skills that we need as women for our next level of growth, like leadership, like public speaking, like networking, branding, working together as women. This thing about women are their own enemies, all of these conversations. So we are bringing that conversation with us to Tamale, specifically the UDS, on the 26th, of this month. That's the 26th of March. All of the amazing speakers who have been experienced in the other regions are coming with us to Tamale. But we also have special surprises for you in Tamale that I want you to come and experience. We are coming to the Northern region for a fun time, not just to talk, but also to bond and to network, and to sort of hold our hands together as women, and recoup and regroup and get ourselves ready for the next phase of building women that are ready to inspire the next generation. Hey, come, let's continue to hold out the sky as ladies. I can't wait to see you in Tamale.